without further ado, I'm going to give up the mic and the floor to Tim Jahnigen.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, the things that I have been blessed to stumble into in my life sometimes pale in comparison to what I consider to be some of the heroic work that goes on here at this place and the extraordinary dedication and skill that Dr. Prasad and his colleagues have undertaken here. So it's very humbling, and it's a great honor to be considered fortunate enough to be part of this wonderful group. And usually not a lack for words being a lyricist, but here we go. So what we have here is the One World Futbol and the One World Futbol project. And I'll get into it, and then I'll start to describe the implications of that. But let me make sure I can do this. Play. This is 3 quick definitions of the word play. But at least, I've seen at least 25 different definitions of the word play. 24 of them have a negative connotation. In our culture and by circumstance, we treat play as something frivolous or something that is a waste of time or a distraction, when in fact, there's only one slightly positive one there at the end. As if we need a scientist to tell us, but the fact is now the research is in that if we don't play, we do not adapt and evolve. Play is probably the foundation for civilization. It is how language is developed, how we adapt to our environment. And now that they know what to look for, they recognize play behavior. Interspecies, you'll see in the videos on YouTube a puppy and a deer playing, or a rabbit and an elephant, or there's interspecies play. Now they recognize play behavior in insects and even down to amoeba. So I'm going to show you a quick video that we prepared about what play is now to children in the world.
Football is religion here.
And briefly, play has become so important that the United Nations has mandated when you go into a disaster zone, a war zone, refugee camp environment, isolated, developing country environment where little infrastructure and so on, you must organize play before you even organize schools. A child cannot even retain what they learn in school unless they can lock it in through play. Play also changes their physiology so that they are receptive to learning. It's a great gift that we overlook. So this whole journey for me started a few years ago. I came home from a long business trip. I was jet-lagged, exhausted, laying on the couch, watching CNN in 2006, and there was a news clip about children in Darfur. Part of the things they were explaining was that these particular children that they were showing in this clip, they had been severely traumatized by the violence around them, had suffered great loss and abuse. And I recognized the PTSD behaviors. Without going into it, I have that myself, so I understand kind of what I was seeing in their faces. But the only thing that they had to play with, and the beauty, the inspiring and heartbreaking part in that, was that they were kicking a rock, because that's all they had. Hundreds of millions of children in the world today play with wads of trash, what we call rag balls. This is one that I traded for in Uganda last year. This is made out of palm leaves and so on. Because when we donate a ball, we all want to do the right thing, so we donate balls for charity to go to Hawaii, lovely, Haiti, or Africa. And what we don't know, and most people don't follow through to find out, is that usually those balls are flat within 24 hours. Because soccer balls are only engineered for grass and turf, a perfect environment. As soon as they come into the real world where real people live and they play where they can find space in concrete and barbed wire and glass, they're useless. So the spirit is deflated with the ball. And so it's a huge, there's a deficit of actual toys for these children to play with. And then there's this wonderful thing through the United Nations called Sport for Peace and Development. It's an extraordinary coordinated movement where, because they'll work with any sport, but soccer being the dominant sport in the world, which is hard to understand for most Americans because it's not our national sport. But one of the reasons it's so ubiquitous is because it's the only sport you can play without a field and without a ball, in that sense. So these balls go flat, and the children have to improvise. And through this sport, though, there are these groups that teach children very important life skills. Things like, in Africa, using soccer, they're teaching children about preventing the spread of AIDS. In Cambodia and Afghanistan, groups that we work with are teaching children about landmine awareness. Throughout the Islamic world and the Latin world, we're working with groups that are teaching children about gender equality and women's rights. And then we're working with some other groups that are teaching children conflict resolution. In Israel, 2 groups we work with that take Palestinian and Israeli children, mix them together, and as soon as they start playing together, there's no more animosity. We have many historic precedents for this sport bringing peace, to simplify it, going all the way back to the first Olympic Games. Thousands of years ago, it got to the point where all wars, everything was under truce while the games were happening. And we even know back to 1914, the Christmas Day truce in World War I outside of Ypres, Belgium. They called a one-day truce. In the first 3 months of the war, the young English and German soldiers came out of the trenches. Long story short, they ended up kicking a ball around together. And that happened multiple times throughout the war in multiple places, but that was the first known documented place. And what the flip side of that, though, is that the next day, when the war was called back on, those people could not shoot at each other because they saw their humanity. So they had to replace all those soldiers with new soldiers to keep the war going for another 3 years and to face some of the greatest atrocities that we've faced in war. So, and I'll ask you to remember that aspect about 1914, the Christmas Day truce, for later. So this ball, I had a vision when I saw those children kicking that rock. I was like, really? We haven't figured out how to make a ball for children so they can be children in these harsh places? I had a quick moment of inspiration. I had a vision that very clearly of how to solve that. I knew about this material. I repurposed it. And this ball never needs a pump. It never goes flat. You can puncture it. You can drive over it with a truck. And it'll still last for 30 years or more. We don't even know how many decades it will actually last. That provides an extraordinary foundation for children to be able to play to their heart's content, not until the ball is destroyed. And we don't know what the world looks like yet because we've only been up and running a year. But in that year, I launched last year during the World Cup in July in 2010. And since then, we have these balls now in almost 130 countries, all 50 states, in small numbers. But I had this great vision for, when I had the idea for the ball, I thought the number 1 million popped up, and I was like, ooh, I better get that done in 3 years. I got to figure out a way to move 1 million balls in 3 years. We'll get back to that as well. Earlier this year, UNICEF ran a study. They compared 80 of these balls against 1,000 traditional pumped-up soccer balls. Within less than a week, 75% of them were destroyed and in the trash, and in one area, 80% of them were gone within 24 hours. At the end of the 4-month study, there were none left at all after the 3rd week, but at the end of 4 months, they had 79 out of 80 of the One World Futbols, and they only lost that one. They couldn't find it. So it didn't just deflate or something like that. I've been very blessed, again, I generally say I'm more idiot than savant. And through circumstances in life, I ended up being in a place where I got to work. I work with Sting as a producer of his Rainforest concert through my connection as a lyricist to people he knows and so on. So we became friends over time. But we weren't very, we had a professional relationship, but then 2 years after I had the vision for the ball, I couldn't pursue it at the time because I'd started another business, and that's a whole other story. Didn't have the financial ability to pursue that. So over a chance breakfast, he invited my wife and I when he came to San Francisco for breakfast. We were sitting around the table, and one thing led to another. And he shared with me about a friend of his who had just helped build a soccer field in Gaza because he knew how important it was for children in war zones and refugee camps to have some place to play. I went, that's really interesting because I saw this news clip a couple years ago that broke my heart but inspired me, and I had this vision, not about the field, but about how to make a ball out of this material that would never wear out. And I wasn't even asking, we were just talking, and he just stopped right there and he goes, wait a minute. I know how important a ball like that is, and the short version is he just said, if you'll do it right now, I'll pay for it. Less than 60 seconds. And that was pretty profound. To me, that moment was probably as profound as the moment I felt like I had a vision for how to solve this fundamental problem. And this slide is a little out of format, but essentially, 7 billion people on the planet, 3.5 billion of them are soccer fanatics and fans. 2.2 billion children under the age of 12 on the planet, literally 1.1, half of all children live in war zones, refugee camps, and harsh inner city environments right here in Detroit, all the way to isolated villages out in the Congo. So even if we were to achieve our 1 million balls in 3 years, if we got, we do this through a buy one, give one model. For everyone we sell in the States, we give one away, and we also work directly with all kinds of organizations to get the balls where they need to go. Even if we were able to move 1 million balls a year, it would take us 100 years to only reach 10% of today's children that live in a place where a ball like that is appropriate. So we're not going to run out of opportunities anytime soon. I knew all along that I'm not a wealthy person, never had those kinds of resources, not interested in that really, but it doesn't hurt to have a little help now and then. At the end of the day, though, people said, well, that's a crazy idea to make a ball that won't wear out. People won't buy another one. Well, with these kinds of numbers and opportunities, I would love to go out of business in my lifetime. It took balls. This is out of format again, but it says it took balls for enemies to come together then. That's 1914. That's Belgium. British and German soldiers. It takes balls now. These are different soldiers playing against each other in different situations, and the One World Futbol has the balls. So I will also show you, well, first I'll show you this one. This one I've carried around the world with me for the last year, and I don't know if there's able to focus in on this at all, but I'll bounce it, so be prepared for a little noise. It bounces just fine. This ball has been punctured hundreds of times with nails and barbed wire, and I'll pass it around, you can see it. And I even took a knife and cut it open. You can stick your hand in there, it doesn't matter. It still plays just fine. People go, well, that's not as good as a Nike or Adidas ball, and well, that's because they make balls for competition. We're not interested in competition. We're interested in play. We're interested in all the beauty and the magic that comes, that we were created to experience. It's one of the greatest free rides in the universe, is to actually fulfill our genetic and evolutionary potential through play. It changes everything in the way you perceive everything around you. And that's what this is about. We don't care if a child in Africa goes, hey, that's really cool design with these special breathing valves, and like, for example, assuming that that's closed, if a car drives over it, it'll release air pressure and just reinflate itself. So we don't care if they notice that. What we care about is letting them, again, have some self-determination. This one spent a year with a dog that would chew and destroy everything. Every day this dog chewed and tore this thing to pieces, whatever it did its best. It's been punctured thousands and thousands of times. Still bounces fine, still it reinflates itself. We just won this huge sustainability award because every hole represents a ball not going in the trash, and every hole represents between $5 and $50 you just saved replacing it. So we gave 100 of our primitive test balls to a child soldier rehabilitation camp in Rwanda, where almost every child there before the age of 8 had already killed 3 people. And that's just a one simple example of the trauma that we inflict upon the world. And so not only do we have to recognize that some of these things you cannot address through drug therapy or even spoken therapy. You need the nuances of language and skills and culture to be able to, and children don't even have the vocabulary to articulate what they've just been through. One of the most powerful therapies is to let them play. It changes, again, it allows them to heal in an inarticulate, non-intellectual way, which I believe is really one of the keys. Is we overthink everything. We think because we can think that we should. And we don't give ourselves the benefit of following our inclinations, because after all, we are animals. I just wanted to say a few other things before I let go here, but as a lyricist, you know, this is one of my works in progress, that our goals mean more than the goals we score. And we cannot say that we have won until every one of us is one. And how that speaks to a lot of different things, and I'm, you know, setting aside religion, but when we talk about sustaining the planet, sustaining our resources and all these wonderful things, and attending conferences and listening to all this incredible wisdom out there and all this work, profound work to save our planet, I believe that the single greatest natural resource is the innocence of the child's human spirit. And if we don't sustain that, there's nothing else worth saving, because we will not, it's a waste of time. So I'm in awe of many of the folks here who are doing extraordinary work, and they're reaching out, and they're, again, trying new things and not accepting the status quo and looking at ways to transcend. And you know, I had to learn many lessons on a personal level to be able to start manifesting into the real world, you know, emotions and ideas and finding solutions. And another thing that it may or may not be a truth, it may not, but it may actually be, when you, I believe, when you actually are focusing on serving, solving a real human problem, it's possible. I feel very fortunate because I didn't set out to design a ball and then try to figure out a purpose for it. I didn't set out to try to, you know, improve the environment by keeping thousands of balls out of the trash. 20 million balls a year, by the way, go into trash heaps in Africa and Haiti. And I didn't set out to save money. I set out to let children be children, no matter where they live and no matter how old we are. I'm a big kid. You can ask my wife. But I was focused on simply fulfilling that one simple thing, and that was more important than everything else and all other considerations. And it just turns out that when, hopefully it will work in other ways, it may be a way of proving how close your theories and ideas are for all of you, because then it can't help but do good. You know, if you're leaving a trail of, you know, fraught with toxins and things, you might want to take a second look at what the benefits outweighing the negatives. So at the end of the day, what I've realized too is I can't change the world. Smarter people than me haven't figured out world peace, world hunger. But this ball may be able to help change the life of a child who can change the world. And when you break it down in simple terms, that's, you know, we have our hope. And I believe that all creativity is equal. There's a great equality. You know, songs, for example, I believe in many ways are as durable and healing as any of the great monuments and any of the great cures. Conversely, it's not that I'm a rock star. We're all rock stars, and every single one of us has the same potential to create when we're put in the right environment, but it all manifests itself differently, and thank God for that, because every one of us has a role, and I just feel very fortunate to be part of this aspect of things. It's a lot simpler. It's too complicated to think about, but it provides a simple thing that can stimulate a lot of things in our world. And and I forgot to mention the whole part. All of this is about partnerships and relationships. I couldn't have achieved any of this without conscious and visible partnerships and many of the invisible ones from people and goodwill all along the way. And I think one of the most fundamental and primary sources of partnership is to be partnering with yourself. I mean, we often we're divided from ourselves. We disconnect in ways that we don't even know, and it's really important to accept sometimes our own humanity. And so one of the third lines that I've hit upon recently was that after we cannot say that we have one until every one of us is one, is that we cannot see God until we see that we are perfectly flawed, and accept that. So thank you very much for your time. And there is not a situation or a place in this world where a ball isn't appropriate for a child, anywhere in any circumstance. And we ask for anything that triggers your imagination about places and ways that you want to get balls to help yourself and children. You know how to find us here. And anyway, thank you so much for your time. It's an honor. Thank you, Dr. Masad.
Thank you, Tim.